Hello, everybody. Welcome to the STEM Sessions podcast, the UK STEM career podcast. Today I'm interviewing Helen Watson. So if you please like to introduce yourself, Helen.
Yeah, my name's Helen. I work for a company called Arup. I am 26 and I am an electrical engineer. I mainly work around buildings engineering and I have been doing that for about 3 years now.
Cool, good stuff. So we're going to backtrack straight away to time at school and things like that. So was there anything that inspired you in your school days that got you to where you are today?
So it's quite interesting that I feel like I kind of fell into engineering. I was always really interested in how things work and kind of the physics behind things and, looking at investigating what's happening and why things are doing, why certain things are moving and just the background of how things work, basically. And I really enjoyed maths as well. And those were what I was good at. I hadn't really thought about what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something that had a positive impact. I kind of wanted to change the world. It sounds really cheesy, but that's what I wanted to do. And so I then looked at what I was good at, what that lined up with. And I didn't want to do, maths on its own or physics on its own. So engineering was one of the things that kind of joined those sort of passions together. And at the time, it wasn't that big of a deal, climate change, as it is now. But that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to, make things more efficient and, really revolutionise the world, as it were. But yeah, so renewable energy was what I sort of focused on. And reading around that, I decided that electrical engineering was the kind of best way to do that. I am now, I think, in a different place to what I expected. But actually, I think I have more impact doing what I do than maybe necessarily designing wind turbines. I think that, I didn't realise how much of a scope there was within engineering to really have a difference on sort of the environment around you.
Cool. So it sounds like you had an idea of what you wanted to go into, but it's a bit different to what it is now. So how is it different? As I say, you've already said how it's a positive thing.
When you think about building design, you just think it's quite like, someone sits there, draws the building, then someone else comes and, says, okay, this column needs to be this big. And then someone else comes in and, puts a fan in so that the rooms are air conditioned. And then, they just put cables in to power the rooms. I don't think I appreciated how much scope as engineers we have to impact the design. We're not just doing what people tell us to do. We're constantly pushing and pushing to make it more and more efficient. People don't realise when they're walking around a building, the thought that's gone into the room setups and different configurations of how the engineering systems fit together. And I think that's kind of the point, is that you don't want to notice. And if as a human you notice the engineering systems, then there's something quite wrong with that. We're trying to design stuff that's naturally, it's intuitive and you can just use it and you feel comfortable in a space. And I think that has a massive impact, as well as making things more efficient. And, that contributes to the environmental side, which is what I was most passionate about. But I think you kind of, when you think about climate change, and especially what I thought, I have to do something renewable, whether that's designing wind turbines or solar panels. And actually I've learned that there's a lot more ways you can be sustainable or implement, better technologies without using the traditional wind turbine or solar panels on a roof. While they're good, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and it's kind of trying to think outside the box about how you can improve what you do.
Oh, interesting. So around that climate change topic then, so what things do you do in terms of making sure that a building is as environmentally friendly as it can be?
So a lot of the time it's kind of a compromise of how people use the building, because we could make it perfectly environmentally friendly, but actually if people aren't going to use the technologies that we've put in, whether it's like water harvesting, rainwater harvesting, or daylight dimming in lights, then it's pointless. Because we look at lights as a lot of a technology that we can adapt. So you can have a lot of different setups. So you can have sensors around the edge of a building where all the windows are to detect natural daylight. And if it's a really sunny day, you don't need your lights on as brightly. So they'll either turn off or dim down so that, you can still see fine. You can still do your job, whatever it is, but you're saving energy that way. But we found that sometimes people put blinds down. So it's a really interesting balance of trying to balance human behaviour with the technologies. But yeah, so the light one is a huge one. Again, the same thing with like automatic switching. So having presence or absence detection. So if someone's not in the room, or they've walked in and turned the lights on and forgotten to turn them off as they leave, having that set up. And then also just using more efficient equipment. So whether it's like your switch gear and cables, you can get a lot of power loss just in transmitting the power from the cable that comes in the street from the utility to actually where you're going to plug your phone in or your computer. So it's making sure that there is as fewer losses as we can get, while still making sure that there's enough power going to whatever you're going to do, because you don't want to plug things in and then find that actually you're tripping the fuse every time. So it's a really interesting balance of stuff.
What's your role specifically in terms of the technologies that you've spoken about?
Yeah, so I do the design. We work with architects, and I also work with other engineers, so mechanical, structural, public health, and basically we'll just do the building design. Sometimes it depends on how it's set up. So we might be working for architects, we might be working for a separate client, the owner of the building, and we'll be given a package of work, and they'll just say, "Go away and please design us a building." Yeah, basically what it is. As an electrical engineer, I am responsible for the power that comes in. So taking the power from the street, whatever voltage that comes in at. So if we do bigger sites, we have to put in substations and transformers and big bits of kit to sort of step the voltage down so that you're not going to stick your finger in a plug and electrocute yourself. Backup power, so do we need generators on site? Do we need a thing called a UPS, which is an uninterruptible power supply? So when we do buildings like data centres or manufacturing plants, if the power goes off for like a second, the machines just freak out and they can't handle that kind of dip in power. So the uninterruptible power supply is basically like a huge battery that also filters the power. So it basically means that if we have a power cut or there's like an issue with the supply, it's there's some fluctuations in the power, that will kind of ride out and make sure that the machines are not damaged, and then the generator can start up and back up the rest of the building. I'm responsible for lighting design. So sometimes we do work with lighting designers if they're doing something particularly fancy, so sort of foyers and like a big atrium space, something like that. But most rooms we would, as an electrical engineer, I would do that. So it's making sure that there's enough light, it's uniform enough, and also there's enough emergency lighting. So if there is an issue with the power, you need to be able to see to get out of the building. So there's a minimum level that is legally required. I also do fire alarm and detection design. So what kind of smoke detection or fire detection systems in a building are going to be installed and where are they going to be installed, making sure that it's all compliant. Also earthing and lightning protection. So yeah, basically protecting the building if it's going to get struck by lightning. Yeah, there's lots of different elements, which I really enjoy because it means my job's quite varied. So, even though you're designing a building, it might be the same. I get to look at lots of different elements of the design. Even if I'm just doing lighting, there's still so many aspects of what goes into lighting a room that I find it really interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing, because people probably would initially think that that's something that's very niche and very specific, but actually there's so much variety in what you do. It's incredible, and as you say, it's all things that people don't necessarily always think about at the forefront, but that's by design. Yeah. That's an example of good engineering. Which is awesome. It's incredible. So is there a project or something you're working on currently that you're really proud of at the moment?
I am working on the design for a new mental health hospital in southwest London, and that's really interesting. And I think, I really enjoy projects that, actively help societies. And I also really enjoy doing lots of different types of buildings because they operate in such different ways. So we talked to the nurses that would be running the wards to find out, actually, how are you going to be turning these lights on and off? And they said that they had some corridor lights and they had some floor lighting and then some ones in the ceiling. And they wanted those to be split onto different switching circuits so that when in the middle of the night, when they're doing their checks, they can have the floor lighting so they can still see and they can see in the rooms, but actually they're not going to be waking people up because there's too much light going into the rooms from the overhead lights. So it's things like that I think are really enjoyable. You get to speak to people and find out, actually what can I do to help you in your job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's been one of the interesting ones.
It's incredible. I don't think necessarily many people would think about that as well, in terms of you're actually speaking to your end users there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Really important, because if you're going to design a building but people hate it, it might look so pretty and be so technologically advanced, but if it's a pain to go in and work in every day, it's not good, it's not beneficial for them. The owner ultimately is going to find that people aren't wanting to rent the spaces out if it's like an office space or something that's being let. It's not good for anybody in the system. So
is there any part of your role in particular as well that you would say is your standout favourite?
It's really tricky. I think one of the projects I worked on first, kind of on my own, was a big standout one for me, because especially I've done a lot of mega projects. So working on an underground railway system with train stations and the tunnels catching them. And there was a huge team of us, and we all had our little roles, but I was very much part of a team working for someone, and just being kind of told like, can you handle this? Can you handle this? And while that was great, it was still enjoyable. I worked on a very small restaurant that was kind of, only like 4 rooms, very open plan, but I did everything because it was so small. And I think the first time I actually was like, I have designed this, I have done all of these systems. It's a particular sense of pride that, I can do this. And also it's now been built and people are using it, and it's in London, so I can go and have a look at it and see people using it, and just seeing people in the space is just so rewarding, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, I did that. And yeah, it's just really nice to see.
Yeah, it's something that you've created, and it's now being used, within society by people, which is amazing. Yeah. So after school and that kind of initial period where you'd discovered your real passion for maths and you found that route, where did you go next? Did you go through university?
Yes, so I went to university. I went to the University of Birmingham, and I studied electrical and energy engineering. I think that course was great because I got to do the core electrical engineering, but I also did some modules of energy engineering, which covered different engineering subjects. So I did a bit of chemical engineering, a bit of mechanical, and a bit of material science. And that was really kind of looking at sustainable technology. So it kind of showed me how engineering can cross over, and really got my energy passion kind of really kicked off.
And was there anything that you did that was aligned to engineering outside of your studies at your time at university?
That was where I first became a sort of ambassador. So my university had a few programs where they were outreach programs. So I started working with them, we developed like a class for school children to kind of help them understand about the power issues and how, it's not just as easy as building, a massive wind farm out in your garden, because that would, although it would be great, everyone would be mad because you'd have these really noisy wind turbines in your back garden. So I set up that, and I got to go around to some schools and sort of show that off. And they also were involved in the first Lego League, which is like a project where they were building robots out of Lego, and they had to do little challenges. So I got to go and help out at some of the competition days there. And yeah, I think it was just really nice to see kind of what people can do when they're faced with a little challenge and some blocks of Lego, and yeah, off they go.
Awesome. So you've been a STEM ambassador for quite a while now.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think it's really enjoyable, and like it's almost more rewarding than going and seeing my buildings in real life, because I'm just constantly surprised at how creative children are, and like creative in an engineering way. Because when I tell them I'm an engineer, or electrical engineer specifically, they think of the person that comes around to your house and fixes whatever's gone wrong, the sockets or whatever. And while that is part of engineering, it's there's so much other stuff. And I am not in a hard hat and dirty boots all day. I'm mostly sat in an office. So I think it's really interesting to see their reaction when they find out how broad engineering is.
Is there anybody that you would say has really inspired you in terms of your career journey so far?
So I had a project manager so we were working on a project in the Middle East, and there was a huge team of women, and all of the project managers and sort of sub managers were basically women. I think we had maybe like 2 men out of like 7, which is very uncommon in the engineering world. Even like now, I mean, it's definitely getting better, but it's still very much a male dominated field. And she was just incredible. She knew exactly what was going on. She was really approachable, and she just was able to connect with everyone in the team and really bring us together. So, you know, she had her eye on the ball on everything. She still managed to every day come round pretty much and be like, how you're doing? Does anyone have any issues? But also, you know, was very technically advanced and, you know, on top of all the issues that were coming up. And she's just been one of those people that anytime I've had an issue, she always makes time for me.
That's great. And I'm also picking up there from what you say in terms of how she's operating, how she's inspired you, that there's a real balance there and real mix of technical skills, but also that emotional intelligence and soft skills and being able to relate to people.
I think people kind of forget with engineering that it's a very big team. You know, I've never done any project where I have been the only person on my own. You know, at minimum there's like, you know, 5, because you've got a structural engineer, an architect, electrical, mechanical, and PH. And then you know that's only the 5 people. You probably have more, a project manager, maybe the client. You know, you have to work with so many people, and if you can't work well with people, you really struggle. And it makes your job harder because we're constantly fighting for space in buildings. You know, I want to put my equipment there, but so does the mechanical engineer. So we're always having these coordination debates. And if you can't work as a team properly, it doesn't make your design work well. You have to be very technical. You know, yes, it does have to work, but part of it is that you know, it's going to work in a lot of different configurations. You just have to find the best one, and that is very much team based and that personable skills.
Yeah, I think that really shows as well in the example that you've given earlier with the hospital, in the sense that, as you said, you could develop the most amazing, you know, technologically brilliant building, but if it's not going to be, you know, happy, or it's not going to generate a happy work environment for the people that ultimately use it, that's the people element of engineering that is fundamental.
I think engineering is so people based. Like, I can't think of any engineering examples where it doesn't come back to people. You know, whether it's building like HS2, the railway, people are going to be using that to travel around. You know, designing a plane, people are going to be traveling on it. Everything kind of engineering comes back to people. So if you start with people, you can't go wrong.
Do you have an idea of where you want to take your career next?
So I do want to stay in the same field. I still want to do buildings. I just really enjoy doing a variety of buildings. I'm always kind of asking what's going on, what different types of buildings we're getting, like projects in the office, you know, what I can get involved with. Coming up, I've been doing a bit of work for a science lab. And there's another hospital in central London that's going through an upgrade that I'm about to start sort of really getting involved in. And that's quite challenging because it's an existing building. As you know, London's quite packed in, so we can't really like make new rooms. So, and we've also got to not remove anything existing before we put the new stuff in, because it's a hospital, so there's people on, you know, life support, etc. So those are the kind of short-term things. Yeah, in the long run, I think I just want to keep doing the same thing, but better. You know, doing more sustainably. You know, sometimes we come across like cost issues that, you know, people run out of money, so they can't put the solar panels on the roof because they're too expensive, and you know, little things like that getting knocked off the design. So I want to find ways to make my design better, but also cheaper, more sustainable. So I'm not one for like big planning, and I think sometimes, especially like when you kind of look at careers stuff, it's all like someone's got a life plan of, you know, exactly when they want to be promoted, and you know, by the age of whatever I want to be doing XYZ. And I very much flying by the seat of my pants quite a lot of the time, and just like, if you enjoy it, keep doing it. And you know, if you're, you know, as long as there's no sort of major issues with it, you know, it's not miles away, and you know, it's not like a really tricky job, then yeah, just keep doing what you enjoy. And yeah, I think, you know, if in 3 years I find that I'm not enjoying it anymore, there's so much more I can do with my engineering skills that I'm not worried that I won't have a job, but I'll find something else, and then I'll learn to love that. So yeah, just keep doing what you love, I think is what I'm going to do.
You want to remain adaptable as well. You don't want to be so dead set on a plan.
And I think, you can only, so if you get your plan, great, you'd be happy. But if you don't get it, you'd be so upset about it. Whereas if I don't have a plan, I can't be upset by not meeting it. So yeah, but I think that engineering is still such a good career to go in that I'm not worried and I don't regret doing it.
Thank you very much for coming in, Helen. It was absolutely great to speak to you, and
I hope that was useful.
Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening, and thanks again to Helen. Helen is actually the second electrical engineer that we've had here on STEM Sessions. First one being Alex Sokol, who's an electrical engineer who works on the production of wind turbines. If you like this episode, be sure to check out that one too, as it shows another side of electrical engineering.